In terms of what keeps me up at night, I guess it's anything that's like, I think, a civilizational risk. To have unvetted immigration at large scale is a recipe for disaster.
Recipe for disaster. And frankly, I think the recipe has already been put together and the cake has been baked. If you were the richest man in the world, would you worry about anything? I mean, imagine being the richest man in the world, the inventor of an electric car that has taken the country and the world by storm, owner of a social media platform where you could say whatever it is you want. And you also have been part and parcel to inventing a brand new space age on the planet that will not only potentially take humanity to Mars to colonize that planet, but also boost space tourism so anybody can go up and orbit the planet if they wanted to. Imagine being that guy. Of course, you know I'm talking about Elon Musk. Would you have a care in the world? What would keep you up at night? Well, he was also at this Milken Institute global conference. And, well, he was asked, what keeps you up at night? And his answer might surprise you, because the things that keep him up at night are actually the things that keep you up at night.
What keeps you up at night and what gives you joy?
Well, I think kids give me joy. So I probably get the most joy from my kids. You know, I'm not saying that that's the reason to have kids, because we should have them anyway, but I certainly, kids are certainly the greatest source of joy in my life. In terms of what keeps me up at night, I guess it's anything that's like, I think, a civilizational risk. You know, if we're, birth rates continuing to plummet, I do think about the birth rates plummeting as being a civilizational risk. I think anything that undermines the foundations of democracy in America or elsewhere as a risk. I think anything that's leading us away from a merit-based system is a risk.
He's got a little bit more to say about that, but that right there, you know, especially that last thing, anything that leads us away from a merit-based system, that's DEI. That's equity. The equity is all about, you know, equitable outcomes for people. In other words, it doesn't matter, not based on merit. You know, we want you to have the same outcome, even if you don't deserve it, or even if you didn't work hard, or even if you're not worthy of having it. That's why he's so against DEI. But then he turns specifically to the immigration crisis in this country and the open border.
You can hop across the border in the South trivially. It's just like very easy. I went to the border myself just to see like, what's going on? Is this real? Or like, is this propaganda or real? And so I just went there and I'm like, oh, it is real. Okay. This is crazy. You know, we've got situations where people are pouring across the border like it's World War Z. I'm like, this doesn't seem healthy. So I'm like, are we checking anyone here, or like, what's going on? And you know, we don't. This is not to say that. I mean, I'm a big believer in immigration, but to have unvetted immigration at large scale is a recipe for disaster. So I'm in favor of greatly expediting legal immigration, but having a secure southern border. So there's some vetting of who comes into the United States. I think this is just sensible.
So it's a recipe for disaster to have a wide open border, which is what we've experienced for over 3 years now under the Biden administration. He saw it for himself. Recipe for disaster. And frankly, I think the recipe has already been put together and the cake has been baked. We're just waiting for that cake to blow up in our face. It may be too late to turn the tide on what we've seen, the disaster that we've seen over this administration. But you've got Elon Musk, who, like him or not, you got to respect his intelligence, his understanding of the world around him, and his understanding of science and technology and how things should work. And he says that that's a recipe for disaster. And he also called what now a civilizational danger?
The greatest source of joy in my life. In terms of what keeps me up at night, I guess it's anything that's like, I think, a civilizational risk. if we're birth rates continuing to plummet, I do think about the birth rates plummeting as being a civilizational risk. I think anything that undermines the foundations of democracy in America or elsewhere as a risk. I think anything that's leading us away from a merit-based system is a risk.
All right, so these are all civilizational risks, not just political talking points that we need to debate and reach resolution on, not formations of political movements that we can create, although all of those things that he just mentioned have been the formation of the political movement of the left, the moving away from a merit-based system. And, oh gosh, they hate the birth rates. They want the birth rates to be non-existent. They actually think that the world is overpopulated and our nation is overpopulated. It's actually the opposite problem that we have here, but they hate humanity. So the left embraces every single thing that he just called as a civilizational risk and a recipe for disaster. Now, Elon Musk, I guess, doesn't try to get political, but it's fascinating to me that this man, who has suddenly become pretty outspoken about issues, not necessarily in a partisan way, but more in a common sense way, to just say this doesn't work. And then Elon Musk is all about what works and what makes sense, right? That if you dissect his public statements and his positions on things, he often comes back to that. Well, that's a recipe for disaster, risk to civilization. See, things aren't going to work if you keep doing it this way. It's very practical. It's very pragmatic. And I think he's open to, it's like, listen, if that works, then I'm for it, because let's do things that work. But I don't think anybody can look at the world around us right now and recognize that the stuff that he just laid out as his number one civilizational concerns and the recipe for disaster that is our open border, and say that any of that is working. None of it is working. And by the way, when he says anything that might undermine the foundations of democracies, I'm with that. I know the left likes to throw around the term democracy is at risk. Democracy is at risk. There really is a risk to democracy right now. When you have the authoritarian instincts of Joe Biden and his party in office, trying to throw their opposition into jail with a show trial. When you have jurisdictions wanting to give the vote to non-citizens in this country, the District of Columbia right now, our federal capital city, has now passed. It hasn't been approved. It's being fought, but they want non-citizens to be able to vote. Does anything undermine the democratic foundations of this country than allowing non-citizens to vote? What's the point? What's the point? And talk about foundations of democracy. 8 million people, it's estimated on the low end, I think it's more, have come across the border illegally in just the last 3 years, and they're all still here. Wherever they're living right now, they will be counted in the next census, and the region that they're living in will get more congressional representation. And lines for congressional districts will be redrawn, and congressional seats will be reallocated. And the Electoral College in our constitutional republic of the United States of America will be reformulated based on all of those millions of people and where they live now. The Electoral College and the makeup of congressional districts and representation on a per state basis does not take into account whether you are a citizen or not, whether you are here in this country legally or not. If you are living here, regardless of your immigration status, you are counted, and then you get representation. So if you've got 8, 10, 15 million people who are citizens of other countries who have entered here illegally, and now they're living in places where they will get representative in Congress, and that state that they're living in will get extra votes for the Electoral College, that undermines the foundations of our democracy. Without a doubt. It undermines the democratic process we use to elect people in our constitutional republic. We are not technically a pure democracy. We are a constitutional republic, but we use the democratic process to select the people who hold elected office. And everything that Elon Musk just laid out, everything that is keeping him up at night, everything that he says is a civilizational risk is happening right now before our eyes. And there's one more clip of him. He was asked why he moved Tesla's headquarters to California. And he spoke specifically about California, but then opened it up and encompassed everything that's going on with Democrats who are in power, either at the state level or at the federal level. Watch.
If year after year there are more laws and regulations passed and more regulatory bodies created, eventually everything will be illegal. And that's why you see the California high-speed rail has made a tiny section that doesn't even have rail on it, for, I don't know, several $1 billion. Because everything's, at this point, California has made almost everything illegal. So you can't make progress. Most poignant example that I can think of that happened this week was the sad picture of the California high-speed rail, which is, it's just billions of dollars spent for practically nothing. But it'll only get worse year after year. So we must have a regulatory sort of clearinghouse, garbage collection process. This is essential, or civilization comes grinding to a halt.
Once again, a civilizational risk by over-regulating. And he's right. You regulate, there's so much regulation that pretty much anything will be illegal. You cannot do anything. The government spending tens of billions of dollars that they should have never spent on high-speed rail from Fresno to San Francisco. Who the hell is going from Fresno to San Francisco? On this high-speed rail line that was the crown jewel of Gavin Newsom's vision for his new California, and nothing's been done because of regulations, because of the environmental hazards, because of the studies, because of this, because of that. Of course it's over budget. It's going to be 5 times the budget if they continue with it. They should stop it. They should stop it immediately and just take the loss. Nobody's going to ride the freaking thing anyway, so who cares? But he points out that when you overregulate something, you can't do anything. And you need to understand something. Elon Musk has built factories all around the world. He has operated all around the world. So he knows how we are compared to other countries. And sure, there are some countries who are worse, but there's a whole lot of countries who are better. And he sees which way we're going, especially in a state like California. When you make so many regulations, eventually everything will be illegal. What Elon Musk needs to realize is that that's the point. That's the goal. See, the Marxist left in America or in any society around the world, ultimately, their existence, their oxygen, their food is power, power and control. And when everything's illegal, then they get to pick and choose who gets stopped, who gets arrested, who gets fined, and most importantly, who doesn't get arrested, who doesn't get stopped, who doesn't get fined. It's always their friends. As long as you're pals with the authoritarians, you're going to be fine. But they get to pick and choose the winners. And by the way, another word for that is equity. We get to pick and choose who has the outcome that we desire. You take those regulations away, you make more things legal and free than illegal and imposed, and suddenly you have a free market competition where the best will rise. The winners will be the ones not who get chosen by the few in power who control everything. The winners will be the ones who innovate and actually work harder and actually do something that there's a demand for. Unlike the high-speed rail in California, which they can't even do that right. Listen, I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about Elon Musk, and I get it. And that's fine. We should all have strong opinions about whoever we want and whatever we want. But when the richest, most successful man in the world is telling you something, you're an idiot if you don't at least listen and think about it. And one other thought about Elon Musk, after hearing all of that, after hearing everything that keeps him up at night and all of the things that he's concerned about that he continues to say is a civilizational risk, it is shocking to me to reflect on the fact that he has recently said that his entire life he has never voted for a Republican. Did he just start figuring all of this out? frankly, I don't believe it. But I guess I have no reason to not believe it.